Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar today. It is a pleasure to be your host today. And once again, thank you as well with my colleagues. We're going to be hosting this webinar speaking about the leading residence programs in Latin America. So I have with me my colleague Bruno, who is a private client advisor based in the São Paulo office. Hey, Bruno, good afternoon for you today. How are you?
Hi, Michelle. Good afternoon. Thank you for being part of this webinar today.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Bruno. And I also joined by my colleague Luis Igarrista. He's based in our Panama office. So hi, Luis. How's it going today?
Hello, Michelle. Hello, Bruno. It's great to be part of the webinar, and also welcome to everybody.
Fantastic. So I'll be back in a few moments with you both. Well, for those who don't know me, my name is Michel Soler. I am the Managing Director for Hendy & Partners for Latin America. I am based in the Miami office myself, and today it is a pleasure to introduce you to the residence programs in Latin America. So we have a focus in Latin America, specifically 3 jurisdictions that are very, very attractive to global investors. So we're going to be speaking about Costa Rica program, Panama, and also Uruguay, which are becoming leading residence programs in Latin America. And we have an increasing demand for these programs overall from all over the world. So stay tuned as we go into the webinar. So very briefly on the agenda, I'll make a quick recap on Hendy & Partners. Just to give you some updates of who we are, what we do, how we can help you, and our global presence. Then we're going to touch very briefly on the world of investment migration. Then we will dive into the leading residence by investment programs in Latin America, which we are able to assist as of today. So that will be Costa Rica, Panama, and Uruguay. There's no preference, just alphabetical order. So we have first myself, then Luis is going to be helping us with Panama. And later on, Bruno, he's going to be explaining the Uruguay program. And then we will have questions and answers. So on the bottom of their screen, you should have, a Q&A box there. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to just type them and we will go over these at the end of the webinar. So for those who don't know us, or perhaps just to give you a very quick update of who we are. So as you know, Hendy & Partners is the leader in the investment migration field. We are pioneers in this industry with over 25 years in experience in helping private individuals and governments with investment migration. We have more than 25,000 clients advised, and as of today, we have more than 70 offices around the world, and we're able to assist with more than 60 programs and different options available for you. So we don't have a bias for specific jurisdictions. We don't have a bias when it comes to the investment vehicle or the investment route. We simply are here to understand what you need, what your family needs, and then eventually we will try to design an investment migration strategy that makes eventually a smooth process and will help you achieve those goals. So before we go into the investment migration, I just wanted to clarify to everyone, just take one step back. And many people ask me, Michelle, what does Hendy & Partners actually do? And if we go and try to understand what investment migration is, it's actually governments that they want to attract foreign direct investment into their economies. And one way of attracting these global investors is by offering them different benefits. And in this case, it will be either residence or citizenship by investment. So Hendy & Partners has the leading government advisory practice around the world, helping governments in different parts of the world to structure, design, and market these residence or citizenship by investment programs. And because of this expertise helping governments, we also have our private clients practice, where Bruno, Luis, and myself, we are at helping individuals and families to eventually make these investments in other countries. And in exchange of that investment, actually obtaining either a residence permit or citizenship as a benefit of making that investment. So those are the core businesses that we have at Hendy & Partners. And of course, when we deal with private individuals and families, we will also touch in their wealth planning related areas. Most likely there could be some services around real estate that we're able to assist as well our clients. It could be educational services as well. We help the children of these families to eventually be placed in universities around the world, with always a focus to obtain a residence permit that may allow them to stay in that jurisdiction and eventually reside, work, and perhaps live further in that country as well. We also have some concierge services that you could perhaps explore with us, since we have a very large global presence and also a large network of connections around the world. We do have these concierge services that eventually we can propose to you throughout the advisory process. As I mentioned, today we have 70 offices around the world. We are probably very close to wherever you are. We have different language capabilities. We have, coverage through different time zones and timings as well. So do not hesitate to reach out to us. Eventually, someone from the closest office will probably reach out to you, and we can start your investment migration strategy. In the Americas, just to give you some information, we have our headquarters in Miami, but in Latin America, we have offices in Mexico City, Panama City, and also in Sao Paulo. But we recently have presence as well in Colombia, in Bogota, and Rio de Janeiro. So stay tuned. We will eventually be closer to where you are, and we'll be more than happy to assist you all around the world. Now, without further ado, so let's go a little bit on the world of investment migration. So Luis, please, if you can perhaps share with the audience, what is residence by investment and why it's becoming more popular when it comes to wealth planning and integrating this into families.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Like you mentioned, I'm going to try to do a brief explanation of what is residence by investment. I just want to mention that the term resident by investment was coined by Henley and Partners, that basically describe the policy of countries that grant a residence permit to foreign investors who want to make a capital contribution to the country. Like you mentioned, for example, in Henley, we work with more than 40 programs, but there are more than 100 countries that work with this type of programs. The idea is countries basically, they want to attract foreign high net worth individuals to the country with the return of the residence. It's a way to obtain investment from abroad in different paths or different vehicles. So one thing that we have to, or is very important to have the knowledge or to be clear, is the difference between residence and citizenship. Basically, the residence is the authorization that a country grants to a person to live in the country. Sometimes, in a case by case, it can give you different type of conditions or requirements, like the option of working or studying, but basically it will grant you the right to live and also to travel, and may give you some travel rights. It can be withdrawn in some cases, and in some cases also it's likely to affect your tax status. On the other hand, the citizenship is the strongest tie that a person has to a country. It comes with rights and obligations, can usually be passed on to future generations, also on a case by case, and also depending on the country. It affords protection from the states, and it's in this case, on the other hand, from the residence, this is a lifelong right that cannot be withdrawn, but under a little and special circumstances.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Luis. So now, Bruno, why don't you share with us some of the reasons why people may come to Henley and Partners looking for an alternative residence or citizenship by investment?
Absolutely. So some of the reasons for an individual to acquire an alternative residence or either a citizenship, it may vary from family strategy, but usually those individuals, they're looking for quality of life. So sometimes access to a better healthcare or transport systems. Sometimes they're worried about the security, so they're looking for a safe alternative places in times of instability. Sometimes they're running from political instability or economic instability in their countries. There are also other reasons, for example, global mobility or education. They're looking for access to high-ranking school for their children, which is it can be an impact on their careers. And sometimes they're also looking for or to relocate to to tax-friendly jurisdictions in a way to reduce this tax burden.
Perfect. So it is very common for us, Bruno, to hear many different reasons, right? So this could be some of those. It doesn't mean that these are the only reasons why people come to us. And when it comes to the jurisdictions, why don't you give us a little bit of the overview of where we can assist, Bruno?
Sure. So here we have our portfolio, the over 60 programs that we can assist worldwide. So basically today we're focusing on the Latin American programs or jurisdictions, which is Costa Rica, Panama, and Uruguay.
Okay, fantastic. So let's dive into those jurisdictions. So I'm always happy to eventually explain these programs to global investors that are looking for Latin America, because it is indeed a region in the world that hasn't been that explored by global investors when it comes to residence or citizenship by investment programs. In this case, we're going to be talking about residence by investment. So the three programs that we are going to be exploring, these are residence programs that may lead to citizenship, but that will depend on different factors. Okay, so we'll focus on the residence part, and then eventually we will also let you know if there is a path to citizenship under these specific programs. So let's just start with Costa Rica. So the one that is, very popular among North Americans, European nationals. Those are the typical clients that, as of today, are coming to us when it comes to looking for alternatives in Costa Rica. But we also start to see demand from all other regions of the world. So that's why we decided to add Costa Rica to the shelf of programs that we're able to assist today. So for those who don't know, Costa Rica, it's in Central America. Population, it's 5.2 million people. The official language is, of course, Spanish, but English is widely spoken throughout the entire country. It is very known because of the biodiversity. It's a safe environment, very relaxed lifestyle. And also one thing that a lot of people know Costa Rica, it's because it's very stable and also very peaceful, right? So one of the elements that a lot of people know about Costa Rica is that they don't have an army, and this makes this country very politically stable, but also very safe compared to other countries in Latin America. Their currency is the Costa Rica colon, but the investments that we will see eventually are a reference to the US dollar, okay? So what are the key benefits that this jurisdiction actually offers to global investors? Of course, it's a very business-friendly environment, and it has many policies that is actually trying to attract foreign investors to come to Costa Rica. Over the past years, Costa Rica has seen not only an influx in global investors that they want to invest in real estate, luxury real estate particularly, but also they want to conduct businesses in the country. So in this regard, Costa Rica makes it very strategic for trade and for global investors to eventually consider as an option. It has a favorable tax regime as well for those that eventually may want to relocate or don't want to spend that much time. It will not have those impacts that a lot of people are fearing when having another residence. And it's also relatively family oriented. You can actually include your core family, such as spouse and children under the age of 18. But if you have adult children until the age of 25 under certain conditions, you're also able to include them. So one recommendation that we always tell our clients is the earlier that you start this process with your children, the easier it will be to keep them in your application. So do not hesitate to start when you have children as minors. Then eventually citizenship, which is something that a lot of people always ask, is there a path to citizenship for this country after a certain number of years that you hold residence? The answer is yes, there is a path to citizenship in Costa Rica after you become a resident. However, that will require you to live in the country. So for most of our clients that are not looking to relocate and look Costa Rica as a plan B option, this will remain a residence program with a potential path to citizenship, depending if you eventually live in the country, and the timeline will be from 5 years if you eventually come from a country from Central America, another Ibero-American country, or Spanish citizens. And if you're not from these countries that Costa Rica has certain agreements or ties, then it will be 7 years after living in Costa Rica. Now, there are many ways to eventually acquire residence in Costa Rica. It's actually, from a financial perspective, still very attractive. The requirements are relatively low if we compare it to global residence or citizenship by investment programs in other parts of the world, such as Europe, for example. Costa Rica still has a very affordable investment threshold for people to eventually obtain that residence permit. So if we go into the investment route per se, we have $150,000 into different categories. That will be real estate, probably the most popular option that a lot of clients will choose. But we also have the possibility to invest in Costa Rica companies or the Costa Rican stock market. So this will be the typical residence by investment program that Costa Rica has. By making an investment prior to making an application, we will eventually obtain a temporary residence permit that allows us to live and reside in the country. There's another route that I like a lot, which is fixed income residency. And this will be for those applicants that eventually have a monthly income of at least $2,500 coming from abroad. Okay. So they don't need to be in Costa Rica, this passive income route. As long as you are able to demonstrate that you have passive income of at least $2,500, then we can eventually get a residence permit for you. An interesting element about the fixed income residency that a lot of people they are not aware is that you can also open a bank account in Costa Rica and deposit $60,000, and that will be broken into 24 deposits of $2,500, allowing you to apply under the fixed income residency route. So people that they may not have the $2,500 from passive income, such as rentals or dividends, they are able to effectively transfer the total amount and break those into bank deposits that will generate this passive income, and that will qualify us for the residence permit. So if we compare to other residence permit that investment thresholds are way much higher, certainly these $60,000 bank deposit route, it's a very interesting one for those looking for a relatively cheap option when it comes to the investment threshold. Now, for the lucky ones that are already retired and enjoying life as global citizens, we also have the retire category. And this is for those that receive a lifetime pension of at least $1,000 per month. So if you're in that category, you're already retired and enjoying your retirement, if that is at least $1,000, we may be able to construct an application based on this specific and very advantageous qualification. Under all categories, of course, we have the typical requirements that every country will most likely request these days. So that would be no criminal records, and then eventually the possibility to apply for Costa Rica as an eligibility assessment. If you want to eventually make an application for Costa Rica, the process, and we will see this for the 3 programs we're going to speak today, but feel free to reach out to us. We will conduct our due diligence checks during our conversations. We will, of course, try to understand if this is a jurisdiction that makes sense for you and your family. After the due diligence checks, which are standard whenever we onboard a client, we'll sign agreements. You'll eventually pay our retainer, and we will start constructing the application so that we will have this ready for when you will go to Costa Rica and apply with the local authorities. And then we will follow the procedure until you have your temporary residence permit. One element that is super attractive for investors in the Costa Rica program is that the moment that you apply to obtain residence, you are actually allowed to eventually stay in Costa Rica until your application is in progress. It doesn't mean that you need to stay. You can actually go out and come back. But if you desire to wait until your application is approved, you will already have that status valid to remain in the country. Okay, so the timeline today to get that temporary residence permit, like the final approval, as of today, it is taking about a year or so, but eventually we will assist throughout the process to obtain your Costa Rica residence permit. It will give you a temporary residence permit for 2 years. And then at year number 2, you will need to renew that again, subject that you still fulfill the conditions. And at year number 3, we will be able to exchange that temporary residence permit into a permanent residence. And by becoming a permanent resident of Costa Rica, then you have this option to liquidate your investment if you eventually decide to, but also you will gain full rights to live and work that do not come automatically when you apply to the program. So at year number 3, that's when you can eventually transform your temporary residence into permanent residence, and you will be able to stay in the country for as much as you want. Physical presence, it's only 1 day per year that you have to be in Costa Rica. So as long as you don't have absences of more than 12 months consecutive, that shouldn't impact on your status. So those that are looking for flexibility when it comes to physical presence, it is actually a very attractive proposition overall. So very quick recap on the Costa Rica program. Those that are looking through investment, the real estate category may be the most popular option as of these days, 150,000 US, but also that 60,000 or 2,500 US passive income will give you a very, very good residence permit to have. On our Henley Passport Index, the Costa Rica, for those that eventually will pursue citizenship in the long run, it is a very good passport. It actually ranks among the top 30 in the world, and you will have access to about 150 plus destinations with the Costa Rica passport if you eventually become a citizen. Okay, so I went onto the very smaller details, but I think that could be helpful for everyone to be aware of these. But why don't we go a little bit further south and just next to Costa Rica, and that is Panama. So Luis, you are a proud Panamanian. So why don't you share with us a little bit about your country?
So thank you, Michelle, and thank you for the opportunity to talk a little bit about my country and the Panama program. So if you can, okay, I'm just gonna do a quick overview about Panama. Like many of you know, or maybe not, Panama is very strategically positioned between Central and South America. It's the global center for international banking. It's very well known for his travel hub or his international airport, the International Tucumán Airport, and obviously the Panama Canal, one of the world marvel that is located in Panama, and one of the reasons why we have decided to have the neutrality treaty, in which more than 40 countries have decided to sign, in which Panama is one of the countries that, after Costa Rica, decided not to have an army. Its population is 4.4 million. The main language is Spanish, but most of the population is bilingual. The economy is a well-developed and service-based economy, a dollarized economy. The currency is the Panamanian balboa, but that is equivalent to the US dollar, but the legal tender is the US dollar. Okay, the key benefits of the jurisdiction is that you have access to the Central, South, and North American markets because of its location. The residence is applicable to the whole family, including the parents of any age. Will give the family a lot of benefits in order if they want to relocate or if they want to consider the program. Like I mentioned before, is the home of the Panama Canal, one of the most strategically placed and used waterways globally. The proximity to Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, different markets, also the Caribbean and North America, and the eligibility to apply after 5 years of residency. It also have different benefits to 1 to 3 years for citizens from some Latin American countries and Spain. Okay, going specifically to the requirements, we have different ways or different routes in which we can apply. One is the qualified investor. That is a very practical one. Is you have different paths or different options with the qualified investors. One is the $300,000 investment on real estate. The second option with the qualified investor is the $500,000 in the stock exchange investment, and the third one will be $750,000 in a fixed term deposits. All of them, they have a very good performance, all above the 4%. That's something that is very attractive of the jurisdiction. And something that is very important to mention is with the qualified investor program, you can apply from abroad. There's no need for you to be in Panama just to apply. And it's a path for the permanent residency right away. And the second option is the friendly nations. That is basically one of the options that will give you or give to the countries that I mentioned before, some countries from Latin America and Spain, a little discount or a little option that will make the investment to be a little bit lower. Basically are the same path. One is $200,000 on real estate, and the other is $200,000 on a fixed term deposit, or an employment by a company in Panama for residents by labor reasons. The difference between the friendly nations option and the qualified investor option is that the qualified investor, like I mentioned before, it will give you right away a permanent residency. But on the other hand, the friendly nation will give you a temporary residency for 2 years, in which the applicant can apply for the permanent residence after 2 years. In all of these options, the investment has to be held for the time that the person wants to maintain the residency, and if they want to apply for the citizenship, they have to withhold the investment for a 5-year period. And the last one will be the forestry investor, that it basically starts with $100,000 in teak reforestation that will allow you or will give you a 2-year temporary residency, and the $350,000 in teak reforestation that will give you, like the qualified investor, a permanent residency immediately. Okay, the processing, like Michelle mentioned, is kind of like the same one that he mentioned in the one in Costa Rica. It is very practical, depending on the route. Like I mentioned, it can be you can apply from abroad, but basically we will do the interviews, we will have the meetings just to see the path or the vehicle that the client or the person would like to take. Again, we sign the agreement, we do the payment of the retainer, we prepare all the documentation to apply with the government, and then we will we will be accompanying the client during the whole process until the permanent residency or the temporary residency permit is issued. Okay, just an overview, like I mentioned before, Panama is a very well-known place because of it has been ranked in the top places to retire, top places to relocate to. International living have been mentioned in Panama of one of the safest places in Central America. It's a dollarized economy, has a very good performance regarding to the investment. It is very well located for business or for traveling because of its international hub, the Panama Canal, and also the Tocumen International Airport. The investment, it started in $100,000. It has a very good passport. It's ranked between the top 30 with over 140 destinations that you can access without a visa. And again, it's home of the Panama Canal. The residency applies for the whole family, including kids and parents. And you have the vehicle or the path for the citizenship after 5 years of residency. So Bruno, I'm gonna give you now the space so you can talk a little bit about Uruguay and the resident by investment program.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you very much. Uruguay is becoming very popular among Brazilians, not only because of the location, but also because of the high quality of life, safety, high standard of living. Also, Uruguay is often described as the Switzerland of the South America, so it's very interesting. Also, it's known for their political stability. It's member of the Mercosur, so it's a very interesting place for those who are looking to relocate to have, plenty quality of life and establish themselves. So with a population of 3.5 million, Spanish is the official language. I'm not sure if English is widely spoken, the same as in Panama or Costa Rica. However, their economy is dollarized, so the currency is Uruguayan peso, but the economy is dollarized. So you can go to a bank, you can have your bank account and make transactions in US dollars. It's a very stable and growing economy, especially in the real estate market. Well, some of the key benefits, as mentioned before, there's an exceptional quality of life and in a peaceful environment, not only in the capital, which is Montevideo, but also in Punta del Este, in the coast, a very famous city. You can have also access to top tier healthcare and education, really top schools in Uruguay. There's a stable real estate market, as I mentioned, which is really interesting for those investors that are looking for good opportunities. There is also a favorable tax regime, so very attractive to those investors that are looking for a tax residency. So they have what's so-called the tax holiday, which is basically an 11-year exemption on foreign sourced income. The application process is very interesting, also very convenient. It should be taking approximately 3 months from the initial application until being approved. And also there is a flexible physical presence, the way that Costa Rica and Panama also have. Well, I think I need to go back one. Yes, good. Just talking about the requirements, slightly different from Panama, and quite similar to one of the routes from Costa Rica. Uruguay doesn't require an active investment. So basically, in this case, you need to prove that you have a monthly income. So it's basically based on passive income. So for applicants that are not part, or citizens that are not part of the Mercosur, then you have to present a valid health card from an authorized provider, making sure that all the vaccines are approved by the vaccination center in Uruguay. And then you need to provide and prove that you have also a monthly income of at least $1,000 in one of the following ways. So you can either apply under the employment or entrepreneurship, and then you must demonstrate that you have this monthly income that is sufficient to cover your living expenses. You can also apply under the retirement or pension. So in this case, you must prove that you have this monthly amount that is received by a institution. And also, you can apply under the income from abroad. So this case are evaluated individually by our lawyers, but you can also demonstrate that you have this income under this route, let's say. So interesting to say that you always have to submit your certificate of no criminal record. So this is something that is also required by the government, and you must you must present this criminal record for the last 5 years. And also, lastly, it's important to note that we're talking about legal residence here. So if a candidate, an investor, or main applicant wants to apply for a tax residency, then you can purchase the real estate with around $500,000 to apply directly and then apply for tax residency in Uruguay, as I mentioned before. Well, talking about the process and timelines, so basically we will conduct all the due diligence. We will advise the families, the individuals on the best program. So we prepare all the application, we will do the onboarding, and then we will apply directly with our lawyer based in Uruguay to for this application to be approved. Since you are granted, you're approved, then you're granted your new residence right, and then we'll continue to support you. Basically, the process of obtaining this residency, it's made by the Ministry of Internal Affairs, but we will support you throughout the whole period. Important to note again, for citizens of Mercosur, they don't need to send the proof of health or for health or other documentations. They can apply directly for legal residence. If a citizen is not from Mercosur, then they need to apply with the proper documentation, which is a little bit bigger. So just to summarize, so the key benefit, Uruguay, the permission or the residence permission, they allow you to live, work, and study in Uruguay. So there is also an eligibility for a citizenship. So there's a path to citizenship if you maintain and establish legal residence from 3 to 5 years. Also interesting to note, as mentioned before, there is it's a growing economy. So the real estate market, it's very interesting for those investors that are looking for opportunities. And it's also a tax-friendly jurisdiction, so very interesting for those who are looking to establish their tax residency, especially this tax holiday that will bring 11 years exemption on foreign source income. So very, very interesting, and for those who wants to invest. So basically, as mentioned before, it's not an active investment. So basically, it's a passive investment where you must prove that you have at least $1,000 from monthly income, and then if you desire to apply for citizenship in the future, it's also a great passport ranked among the top 30 jurisdictions countries according to our Henley Passport Index.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Bruno. I think one of the elements that I like the most about Uruguay is, as you mentioned, this program, a lot of people think Uruguay has a residence by investment program, but it is not the case. They have a legal residence program that is not based on an investment. It's actually based on passive income. However, if you decide to make investments, this will reinforce those ties that you have with the country and the intention to reside, which is one of the elements that the Uruguay authorities actually are looking for renewing the residence permit eventually on the long run. So if you eventually make investments in real estate, if you incorporate a business in Uruguay, those are the elements that the government will be actively looking to assess whether you have maintained your ties and your residence in Uruguay. So that's one element that many countries do not have, but I think it's very interesting for global investors, and specifically those who are looking for a tax residence with low physical presence requirement through real estate at about 550,000. I think that was the latest threshold. They can indeed obtain tax residence with about 60 days of physical presence in the year. And if they invest even a higher amount, then the physical presence can be even lower than that. Okay, so I think we cover the majority of the elements around residence in the different countries that we were to explore. We're going to go very quickly into the questions that we have here in the chat. So feel free to send your questions there. So how many days per year do you need to spend in Uruguay to get citizenship? So I'll answer that very quickly. Uruguay does have 183 plus days per year within those 3 to 5 years of eligibility that you need to spend in the country in order to become eligible for citizenship. Now, just to clarify, why 3 or 5 years? So if you are a married applicant, the timeline will be 3 years. If you are a single applicant, the timeline is actually 5 years. So, those that come to with families to Uruguay, it doesn't need to be with a citizen of Uruguay. As long as you're married, that time frame may be reduced from 5 to 3 years. We have another question. What are the requirements for tax residency in Costa Rica and Panama? So we had another webinar previously that you can also check, where we spoke about tax residency in Latin American countries. So feel free to eventually go and check that webinar. Very quickly, tax residency in Costa Rica will fall into the physical presence, the typical 183 plus days, as far as I know. And then eventually in Panama, Luis, if you want to eventually touch on that, just kind of like a reference. Yep. But of course, we are able to clarify specific situations with our tax services department.
Yeah, exactly. It basically follows the same rule, the 183 days. Obviously, nowadays with Civis Mundi or the citizens or the global citizens, there are different conditions that you can prove that there is economical substance that will show that your interest is located in Panama. But that will be under analysis of the authorities. But most of it, the main rule will be 183 days. If not, there's a few conditions that can be considered. But again, like mentioned, it was mentioned, like Michelle, we can review by detail, case by case, with our tax advisory. And also there is a very good webinar regarding taxes.
Thank you, Luis. So we have another question from Michael here. Can you elaborate on the health card and vaccine requirements for Uruguay? So yes, very quickly on that. So Uruguay will require to, let's say, register those vaccines in Uruguay. So we will need to eventually bring your vaccine records into the local vaccine center so that they can, coordinate the equivalent necessary basic vaccines in Uruguay. And once we have this, that will be one of the requirements that needs to be presented. So I don't know the exact details of which vaccines are required, but eventually, if you send us a message, Michael, we'll be able to clarify what specific vaccinations are needed. I'm not sure if COVID was one of the requirements, but the basic ones when you get as a kid will be in the list. But happy to answer that off the record. If you incorporate a company, what is the tax? So as I mentioned, we're not tax advisors specifically, but one of the elements that will reinforce the residence program is if you eventually incorporate an entity in Uruguay. So those are the kind of elements that the government will be looking when it comes to your intention to reside. Of course, in Uruguay, you have different type of company incorporations. You also have some free trade zones. So, in order to assess that question about the taxation of companies, it will really depend on the specifics, whether that is a typical company or whether that is in a free tax zone. So we'll be able to answer that off the record as well if you send us a message. The processing time for Uruguay. So the processing is actually depending on certain factors very quickly in Uruguay. So we will construct the application prior of you coming to Uruguay and applying in person. We will gather all the documentation prior to your visit. Once you are in the country, you will eventually need to visit the migration authorities and also the civil registry. One element about the program is that you need your birth certificate to be registered with the local authorities and this local civil registry in Uruguay. So that process is taking a little bit longer. But overall, the initial residence permit should be relatively fast, within 2 to 3 months. The final permanent residence, in a way, it's taking about a year from the submission of the initial application. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. I'm just going to leave, once again, our contact details on the screen. If you eventually want to reach out to us and if you have any other questions, feel free to do so. We'll be more than happy to assist you, explore the options with you, try to understand your goals. And I think that will be the first step to eventually help you on the strategy to construct investment migration strategy as global mobility. So I wanted to thank everyone again for your attendance. Thank you, Bruno. Thank you, Luis, for hosting this webinar with me.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you, Luis.
Well, thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Bruno, and thanks everybody that assisted to the webinar.
Thank you, everyone. So we'll be more than happy to assist, so feel free to contact. And once again, thank you for your attendance and have a great week ahead. Bye now.